Thank you both for joining us. Nathaniel, let's start with you and what you and your colleagues at Yale have been monitoring in Al-Fasher using satellite imagery and open source data. Obviously, we have had difficulty as reporters getting access to the brutality that has been unfolding there. But just talk to us about what you have been seeing with the satellite imagery.
Well, now we're just over a week out. And the picture that the imagery is providing for us is unfortunately very clear and very grim. By the time we reached Monday of last week, we could see Rapid Support Forces vehicles engaged in house-to-house killing. They were blocking alleys with pickup trucks with large machine guns on the back. And we could see objects throughout the last neighborhood that was holding civilians called Deir Azula. We could see objects that were between 1.3 to 2 meters in length, which is the average size of a human body seen in imagery lying horizontally on the ground. Around some of those objects, we started to see red discoloration, and we believe that is consistent with blood.
When you saw those images, the blood, the bodies, the red discoloration across the city, what went through your mind?
I was horrified. I wanted to throw up. Unfortunately, I wasn't surprised. We've been warning the international community since July 2023 that this was going to happen. It was arguably the most accurately predicted mass killing in history. We briefed the UN Security Council 6 times. None of this was shocking. We had it down to the day, almost the hour. The only thing that's shocking is the lack of international response.
You briefed the UN 6 times, and there was no response. Hamid, how, in your opinion, did the UN, allow this massacre to happen?
It's not only the UN, unfortunately. Indeed, the UN is definitely complicit and partially responsible for what's happening in Al-Fasher, but it's also so many other governments. I really appreciate the work that Nathaniel and colleagues at Yale, HRL have been doing over the past month and years and so on. But we've also briefed US government, UK government, European governments about what's happening in Al-Fasher and about what's going to happen in Al-Fasher, because the fall of Al-Fasher was neither, a surprise or unforeseeable. It was anticipated, it was documented, repeatedly warned about, and the level of atrocities that are unfolding at the moment were also very much predicted, because we've seen the same pattern take place in Al-Jenaina 2 years ago. Obviously, the Rapid Support Forces committed so many atrocities wherever they went, but the same, pattern was seen in Al-Jenaina because of the specific ethnic complexities of the Darfur region that is very different to what's happening elsewhere in Sudan. And all these governments were, addressed, briefed, particularly about civilian protection and atrocity prevention. Yet everyone chose to watch as this happens and unfolds. And now, we get nothing but empty statements of condemnation.
Can you give us more in terms of what has stood out to you as we are getting some of these survivor accounts of the massacre and the atrocities, Hamid, from what you're hearing?
I mean, it's every story that I heard was devastating on so many levels. The stories that we are not getting of those who are, still trapped inside. One of the recent reports, also by Yale HRL, suggests that, you can't see anyone anymore. People are either hiding or dead. In Al-Fasher. And those who have managed to flee were chased, throughout the way as they were leaving. They had to obviously flee on foot. Some of them had to walk for 60 to 70 kilometers to reach the town of Tawila. And as they arrive there, they would tell you the most harrowing stories about how, for instance, men and women were separated and children were separated, and then the men were killed, and then the women had to go and walk for 70 kilometers with young children. And while they walk, throughout that very long walk, they would see bodies all over the way of people who were either shot or died of hunger or died of, different diseases. It's just an unimaginable situation that we have seen coming, but no one did anything about it.
And systematic killings is a term we keep hearing over and over again, Nathaniel. I was listening to an Economist report this morning, and it was detailing how a hospital there, they believe every single patient in that hospital was murdered. Your latest analysis shows the before and after of a maternity hospital and a former children's hospital and how it turned into a detention site. You also had sources there on the ground who you've lost contact with. I hate to ask you, it seems pretty obvious, sadly, but what do you think has happened to them? Why have you lost contact with them?
Well, there's been a communications blockade, but we also assume they're dead. On Monday morning, we received word that 1,200 had died in Al Fasher. By evening, sources said 10,000. By Tuesday, we couldn't reach them. And then, meanwhile, we're seeing a velocity of killing that can only be compared to the Rwanda genocide. We are looking at a mass casualty event that could exceed in a week the amount of people who have died in 2 years in Gaza. That's the speed of killing we're at based on what we're seeing with piles of bodies on the ground.
You said you haven't seen violence like this since Rwanda, the velocity and the ferocity of the RSF and their murders, you said, is something you haven't seen in some 26 years of your work. You've also accused the United States and the UK of prioritizing its ties with the UAE over enforcing some serious sanctions and putting more and more pressure on the UAE to stop supplying and supporting the RSF. That is something the UAE continues to deny. But talk more about the pressure you think the United States and the UK should be putting on UAE.
Well, we have incredible reporting from last week by Robbie Gramer and the team at Wall Street Journal that have U.S. intelligence assessments from Defense Intelligence Agency and the Bureau of Intelligence and Research at State, which confirmed that the UAE armed the RSF and actually confirmed assessments by our team at Yale that the UAE had transferred fixed-wing drones to the Rapid Support Forces for the fight on Al Fasher. So the point is that the RSF is able to do what they did here in Al Fasher because of UAE support. Press releases aren't going to save those who are still alive. The only thing is a put up or shut up moment for Mohammed bin Zayed in Abu Dhabi to tell them you stop supporting the RSF or you're finally going to face consequences you're going to feel.
Well, we should note that the International Criminal Court, the prosecutors there said today that they are collecting evidence of alleged mass killings and rapes from reports from the RSF after they seized Al Fasher. Are you in any way working with the ICC? Have they reached out to you in terms of the evidence you've been able to collect? Nathaniel?
I'm going to say no comment for reasons that will be obvious to viewers.
Okay. Hamid, in your words, I would imagine on the one hand, it's encouraging to hear that prosecutors are collecting evidence here. Ultimately, though, do you think that people who should be held to account will be at the end of the day?
Honestly, at the moment, I'm not quite optimistic in any way, and that's for a number of reasons. For instance, the processes that the ICC and other, international systems of justice take are very slow, and the Sudanese people cannot wait for that. For instance, just a few weeks back, we had finally one of the convicted of the Darfur war and genocide back in 2003 was just now tried in The Hague and found guilty almost 22 years after that genocide happened, while another genocide is unfolding in Al Fasher and in Darfur in large. So that kind of timeline does not work. We cannot afford it. But also because of the way peace is being made today, because of the way the international community is engaging and diplomatic efforts have been made, continue to kind of prioritize the warring factions, the belligerents, over civilian actors, and continue to appease them in a way that only rewards their violence and only that encourages more violence, because the more violence you commit, the more power you get, apparently, as far as peace processes nowadays are concerned. So unless there is a fundamental shift in how we make peace, in how these belligerents are not rewarded and are held to account, and that peace does not mean sacrificing justice and it does not lead to more impunity, I don't think we are going to see an end to this.
What role, Hamid, do you think the United States should play here in fostering and pushing for peace and a ceasefire? This is a president who has said that he has overseen now 7 or 8 ceasefire and peace deals. What will it take to get this on his radar, too?
I think what's very important for the U.S. to do quite immediately is to hold its very close allies and friends to account. The United Arab Emirates, there's, as Nathaniel was speaking, there's more than enough documentation of their support to the rapid support forces and how they have been enabling the atrocities that are happening on the ground. So holding them to account and ensuring that there are no more arms, going into Sudan and violating the arms embargo of the UN and of so many other countries that is now only ink on paper, ensuring that, actors like the United Arab Emirates, but also others who are supporting other belligerents like Egypt and so on, are held to account. This is something that is, very easy for the U.S. to do. Just pick up the phones and call the heads of these states and ensure that they don't continue this anymore.
Nathaniel, you're speaking to us from Yale. 2 decades ago, college campuses helped lead the Save Darfur movement. Now we see that college campuses, as it relates to this particular massacre and issue, are rather quiet. We've seen what happens when they mobilize in the response after October 7th and the pro-Palestinian movement there on college campuses that went on for months. Are you surprised? Why don't you think we're seeing the same amount of turnout and support for those civilians in Darfur and al-Fashir?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the Save Darfur movement was unprecedented in terms of the amount of resources that went from all sorts of communities, with real pressure from the right, from the evangelical Christian community. It was well-funded, well-organized, and now I think a generation later, Frederick Douglass's point he made about the abolition of slavery. Power concedes nothing without a demand. In this case, there was no demand, there was no organization, there was no built-in constituency here, as was the case with Gaza, et cetera. And now these people are dying in absolute obscurity.
So what is your message to college students? We've seen how campuses across the world have mobilized. They have attracted media attention, wall-to-wall coverage. Do you think that they could be equally influential here in terms of this particular crisis?
Well, right now we're talking about a mass casualty event that could rival Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Just the bodies we can see on the ground is multiple 9/11s. And so the point is, a message to anyone, do something. We're in a matter of hours or days is the scale of time we're working on here. And so call your congressperson, call your senator, do whatever you can now, but we're running out of time.
Hamid, I'll give you the last word.
This is definitely not a civil war inside Sudan that is contained to the borders of Sudan. And this is something that the international actors and audience and so on need to really get right, particularly, for instance, in the U.S. This is a very much an international war that is fueled by arms that are provided by actors who are allies of the U.S., including, obviously, actors who buy arms from the U.S. So it's an international war that the entire world is contributing to in one way or another. So if you think that, you're isolated from this in any way, that is not the case.
Nathaniel Raymond, Hamid Khalafallah. Nathaniel, we will stay in touch with you and really appreciate the important work that you are doing, and we will continue to cover and highlight the atrocities happening in El Fasher and Sudan. We appreciate your time.